Well, thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Dustin. I'm the Director of Events and Communications here at the Writers Guild Foundation. Thank you all so much for joining us for this panel today. For those of you who are new to the Writers Guild Foundation, we're the nonprofit arm of the WGA West, and we serve the public and specifically emerging writers and talent. We have one of our biggest staples is probably the Writers Guild Foundation Library, which has over tens of thousands of produced TV show and movie scripts that you could read on site. It is free and open to the public by appointment only. In order to make a reservation at our library, you'll have to go to our website, which I'll throw all that information in the chat. In addition to our library, we also host events just like this one for the public and our community programs, including the Veterans Writing Project and the Writers Access Support Staff Training Program, which help underserved writers kickstart their careers. So you can learn more about all of our offerings on our website at wgfoundation.org. Before we get into the meat of today's conversation, I'm going to pass it off to our partners over at Storyline Partners, and specifically Sanaz. Sanaz, take it away.
Thank you, Dustin, and thank you to our writers and everyone joining us tonight. As mentioned, my name is Sanaz Alisafar. I am Executive Director of Storyline Partners. We are a nonprofit collective of cultural consultants that actively advise on entertainment narratives in film, TV, podcasts, and gaming. I'm pretty stoked that this is our first panel in a series this year, spotlighting and highlighting Native American, Indigenous cultural production in film and TV. The impetus of this was really reading a soundbite in late January where the Immigration and Customs Enforcement, otherwise known as ICE, were questioning, stopping, and detaining members of the Navajo and Mescalero tribes. And so I figured we need to start back at the foundational OG Americans, which are Native Americans. So I now pass it to our lovely moderator, Aiko Little, who is the co-chair of the Native American and Indigenous Writers Committee. Thank you so much, Aiko.
Alrighty, thank you. Haumi takiapi, Aiko chikla majiapi kishta, ma agala lakota. Hi everyone, for wherever you're tuning in, thank you so much for joining us tonight. As mentioned, I'm Aiko Little, I'm Ogala Lakota, greeting you in Lakota and English. Tonight is an incredible night because not only do we have one native voice, but multiple. Hello, love that for us. And so I just want to thank my storytellers here, Erica, Sierra, Migizi, for joining. Everyone that's tuning in, thank you so much. We'll be that. So before we dive in, Erica, Sierra, Migizi, if you all could, just tell us about yourselves, your tribe, background, your title, and your journey. We'll start with Erica.
Waskanot Swagwego on the Wayastat ni Gyaso, Agatsanoni Nanto Iges, greeting you in Cayuga. I am from the Seneca Cayuga Nation, grew up in my community in southwestern Missouri, northeastern Oklahoma. I am currently in LA, live in upstate New York on my ancestral lands. I have what was the other question? What's my title? I don't know. I got a lot of those. I got a lot of those. But I've worked on lots of different projects. Worked with Migizi on Reservation Dogs. I work on Dark Winds. I made a movie called Fancy Dance. So it's very exciting to be here with Migizi, and such a huge fan of Sierra. So great to be in conversation.
Thank you. Sierra?
Sure. Yat Sierra She, Tabahinishle, Nikadnet Bashashi, Twahagini Dishache, Do Nikadnet additionally. My name is Sierra Taylor Ornelas. I am a proud member of the Navajo Nation. I am Mexican American. I'm Mexican clan, born for the Edgewater. I'm Edgewater, born for the Mexican clan. And let me go through. I don't know, I'm like trying to rattle through. I'm from the mean streets of suburban Tucson, Arizona. I was born and raised Arizona. What else? I'm a comedy writer. Was a showrunner and co-creator of a show called Rutherford Falls. I've worked on Brooklyn Nine-Nine, Superstore, Happy Endings, Loot, and most recently St. Denis Medical, and with Bobby Wilson and a wonderful stand-up named Jackie Kalia, have co-created and co-wrote a pilot called Untitled Ornelas Kalia Wilson Project, which is really rolls off the tongue, which has just been picked up to pilot by NBC. So we are currently making that as we speak. I am very exhausted. I'm a mom. I'm a decent mom. And yeah, that's sort of my thing. Oh, I'm a 5th generation Navajo tapestry weaver. So thanks for having me here.
Thank you. Migizi?
Hello, Migizi, Pensoneau, Makiapdo. Just kidding, I'm not Dakota. I don't care. Migizi, Pensoneau, Indigenous cause. I'm from Bemidji, Minnesota originally. I'm, I guess, writer and producer, and have been on a number of random things, and the journey is too long to really go all the way into. But I got started out as a staff writer on Alias 20 years ago, and then promptly left TV and came back, and now I've been doing that again for a while. But currently, most recently on Alien season 1, Alien Earth season 1, and like you said, I actually worked as an actor for no reason whatsoever. I don't know how I ended up at that job for Sierra on Rutherford. and,
Thank you.
And worked with Erica on Reservation Dogs, as she said. So I'm just all over the place, ever doing everything and nothing. There you go.
Love that. Thank you. So for many of our audience that are tuning in, this is perhaps, as I mentioned before, it's a really important panel because not only is it one Native voice speaking, but we've got multiple Native voices here chatting, about our own stories. So just for a quick moment, if you can entertain me, if we could just break down some of the few terms that we tend to use in like Indian country, and anyone please feel free to chime in, like res, what is that versus urban native, what the heck Indian country is, and why is it crucial that folks know these terms? If anyone wants to chime on in. No, I'm like, it's fine.
I'm just like,
You mean like I don't understand the question. I'm so sorry.
No, forgive me. I'm like, it's been a day. So some of the terms that we tend to use in like our normal lingo, like me, I'm from the Bay, so I'm an urban Indian versus someone who's, from like Chumash. They're from the res, So if you could please entertain me, and for some of our audience that aren't used to that kind of lingo, like maybe go into a little bit of like what we tend to chat and use.
I can speak on the urban native tip. I think our pilot is set at an Indian center in Oakland. And one of the things we talked about was like, I think most people associate Native folks with like being from a reservation. And I did not grow, I lived for like a year on my res. And I remember like when I first moved here, my reps were like, so you were raised on the reservation, like kind of like we can say that in meetings. I was like, you can't say that in meetings because that's not accurate. And so like I have, very deep connections to my family. My family still lives up there. We go back a lot and visit, but like I never ever wanted to present myself as someone who was from the res. And I think, seeing like Jackie is like a 5th generation Bay Area Native person. And I think there are certain cities where like you have just generations and generations of Native families who've lived in the city. And I think the majority of Indigenous people actually live off, either in urban areas or suburbs. I'm really trying to coin suburban Native because I feel like there are no t-shirts that get made for us. It's either like diehard res or urban, but we are sort of left out. Can't imagine we'd sell that many, but if you look at like where like Phoenix and stuff, there's so many suburbs. I feel like there is a whole wave of kids, I think, who are going to be making stuff from that perspective soon. I think I remember seeing like Issa Rae doing Insecure, and that was such a great kind of revolutionary storyteller for me because I was like, oh, this is someone who I really identify with in terms of being like super steeped with your culture, in your culture, very proud, but also very much a part of, I think, like a mainstream as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I had a moment, like quick anecdote from last week, I think. I was like in a room full of thespians and I was talking about like snagging. And I was just going on and into like, oh yeah, and then you have a snag, and that's different from a situationship. And everyone's like, pause, like what does that mean? So it's like really crucial. And I love like a suburban Native, like that sounds so cool, and just like bringing that kind of lingo forward and making that more of like, this generation's type of way of speaking, and incorporating that storytelling language. So
I feel like there was a lot of like animosity between like city Indians and like res natives when I was a kid, because it was like there was such a disconnect. And now it's like everyone has YouTube. Like all my nieces and nephews, they're all skibbity toileting around and watching the same stuff. It's like not as deep, I think. Like so like my son plays with his cousins, and like it's not as, I think, like I remember it being kind of like a thing when I was a kid, and I feel like that's happening less and less. But no, on Rutherford, we had a scene where it was, I think Devery was playing a character, you had Jana and you had Michael Gray Eyes, and they all had different versions of snag, like different ways of saying it in their communities. And then we had like Sydney Freeland directing and me show running. And so we were like, this is the most native people talking about snag, like on a like on a set, probably. But no, I feel like even within our own communities, like the lingo gets, changed and is different.
Absolutely. Yeah. And kind of to go into that, I kind of want to focus a little bit, Sierra, on specifically your pilot, you, Jackie, and Bobby's pilot to NBC. And it's just like, it's so exciting to see the community get a win this year in particular, because so much is going on within the world, but like finally to see a little bit of like the Bay Area community coming forward. And I know you probably can't go into too many details about it, but would you kind of tell us a little bit about like the development process of it all and just a little bit of backstory to it?
Yeah, for sure. I would just very quickly say, yeah, I worked with Bobby on Rutherford Falls. He played Wayne and was one of the writers on season 1. And then Jackie Kalia she had a podcast that had 3 episodes. Bobby was one of them. But on that podcast, they were so funny, and they just had this banter, and there was sort of like a teacher's pet good girl version of Jackie and this sort of like scrubby dude, Bobby, and the way they played off each other, I just thought was really funny. And so I reached out and was like, would you guys ever want to develop something together? And they were like, definitely. And so we just started talking, and we talked about how, just sort of like the seminal moments of, obviously reservation dogs really representing that community, and kind of where we all came from. Like, I'm not from a city, I'm from Tucson, but, Bobby is from, Minnesota and Minneapolis, and Jackie being from the Bay. And so we talked about all these like Indian centers that we had interacted with. My aunt worked for many years at the Denver Indian Center, and I'd worked, all of us had experiences of working in like an Indian office. And so we started kind of talking about that, and Bobby sort of really relying on those centers as a place as a kid to really, not just find community, but really kind of help him along in life. And so we just kind of thought, and then Jackie talking about these Bay Area families, and also just like families in Tucson and families in other parts of the country where, they've been there for generations. And so like just sort of kind of taking all of our experiences working in different centers, and using these centers, and kind of coming up with a story about sort of the urban native experience that's also just like funny. We all grew up on like NBC comedies like Cheers and Parks and Rec and Community, and for me, Wings. I'm a huge proud Wings fan. And so just those like really great ensemble comedies, and how we, I think, would really benefit from that kind of story.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so exciting to see, and of course, fingers crossed to see where all that all goes. Also, another side anecdote, I actually was like a background on Rutherford, so it was really cool to just see you all like chatting it up and just, mind melding and seeing where the stories would go. I like did the Halloween episode. I was Ariana Grande.
Oh, awesome.
So like it was just like such a pivotal moment, like because I only lived in the Bay. So like that moment in itself, I was just like, oh, wow, it's so beautiful to just see it come forward. So I love seeing like your journey, Bobby's journey, Jackie's journey, of course.
For sure.
So thank you. Thank you for that. So pivoting forward, Erica, I wanted to talk a little bit about fancy dance, if that's all good with you. So, among the many topics that are highlighted in the film, for me, like what really hit close to home was seeing how the child welfare system helps, or rather hinders, our community. Like, I'm a child of ICWA, so like seeing it on screen, I was like, oh, okay, yeah, this is powerful. Amongst like many other topics that are powerful within fancy dance. What was beautiful is that you were able to bring us along Roki and Jax's journey, and enlighten folks to moments that like for them is not something they see every day, but for us is truly like on the daily. All that being said, could you talk a little bit about how you and like Michiana were able to find balance in bringing these subjects forward?
Yeah, Michiana and I, when we started writing the script together, we kind of knew the characters and where we wanted them to go, but it was like figuring out what like their journey was going to be and like the topics that we would bring into the film. And when I was writing the film, I was actually doing a 3-year-long language immersion program. So I was studying my language for like 8 hours a day, and then at night I would write. And my immersion program was in Canada, and so it was like one of the buildings that we used was one of their like residential schools, and like just being able to kind of have this like I wouldn't say a cultural exchange, but like I grew up in Oklahoma, and like the way that we are as Haudenosaunee there is like the same and also totally different than it is with the Haudenosaunee that live up in Canada. And there were just like so many like themes and topics that were so similar in like the lived experience. And one of those is like, the forced removal of kids from our communities and like the damage that that did and is still doing. And I think that if anyone knows about, boarding schools even existing, people love to think that, well, that's just in the past. Like those things, like, we're not still stealing Indian kids. But, my mom was an educator in our community for almost 30 years. And, there were so many times where, as a teacher, it was like she had to make the hard decision, like, do I call child, do I call like because this kid's going through something, or do I not call? Because the consequence of calling was likely that someone was going to show up either at the school or the home and remove the kid from the community. And just the how that is still exists in our communities today. We really wanted to have that be one of the things that the film talked about amongst missing and murdered indigenous relatives, and uh you know, all of those topics. But really we wanted it to be like a story about an auntie and a niece, right? And it was like we really we were like those things exist kind of in the periphery and in the background of the journey that these two women are on together. But really it's like, how can we have a story about an auntie and a niece, and like a coming of age ceremony, and just like the reverence with which we treat our first moon and our periods, and like all of that. Like that's what we were really excited about writing about, and to kind of grounded in the story of two modern Native women. We thought those topics would be something that would be, I guess, fruitful for us to explore because of our own experiences as Native women. And yeah, I mean, it's tough because whether it's working on we had really challenging topics on res dogs as well. It's always this strange thing where like you feel like this like really like intense responsibility to like to tell all the stories all at once. And like you're like, well, I want to laugh, but also we're going to talk about this like really like violent topic that like we face every day, and like figuring out how to like do it without like pissing off your grandma, which is important because you don't want your elders to be mad at you, but you also want it to be entertaining. And like, it's just like the bar, like there are many bars and they're all high in terms of like what you're responsible for doing. And so I feel like it's nice to, it's nice to be able to, I don't know, I feel like at some point we'll be making movies that aren't like fancy. I mean, I like my movie, I love my movie, but at some point maybe it's not someone who's like going through a really traumatic event and like has to like, endure, and we can just laugh and have fun together. But yeah, no, I mean, I'm really grateful for my partnership with Michiana, and to be able to kind of create something that was not only healing for myself, but hopefully, healing for other people. And like, because I wrote the film while I was in language immersion, it was really amazing to have so much of the film in Gayokono in Cayuga. And we have very few first language speakers left. They're all in their 80s and 90s. And that was the most rewarding screening that we had by far. It wasn't Sundance, it wasn't South by Southwest. It was taking that film back to the elders and screening it for them, and they're all like smiling, and they're like, I never thought I'd see our language in the movies. and you know, and that it sounded right, and that we had done the work to make sure that it was done well. So yeah, I mean, you know, again, it's like you're trying to get all of those pieces right, and sometimes you succeed and sometimes you don't. But you know, you keep pressing and trying, because for so long in this industry, like, it's been so extractive and it's taken so much from our communities. And you know, not just in like the representation, but just like the absence of us, or just like the way that we have been presented into the world. And so it's very scary to feel like the pressure of like, okay, we're here now and we're gonna like wow you with everything. And sometimes you get it right and sometimes you don't, and that's okay to not always get it right. And but I will say that what's so great about this community, and like just working with Michiana, and like, you know, watching Sierra's work and Migizi's work, is that like I do feel like, at least in my film community of folks that I know in this industry, we are all sincerely trying hard. Like, we are trying hard not to piss our grandmothers off.
Hey, it's always for grandma. Anything and everything. Always for her. I'm sure grandma's somewhere in the chat too. Shout out to the grandmas, the aunties, the nieces. So thank you for that. Migizi, let's chat a little bit about some of, you know, the projects you've done, you know, from 1491s to Two Cents Horror Stories Loved, to Res Dogs, to now, you know, Alien Earth, and I'm sure a few more projects that we won't get into if they're a secret or not. And of course, please, Eric, Sarah, please feel free to chime in as well. But Migizi, I really want to ask you, like, could you tell us a little bit about any changes you've observed from the writer's room environment, from when you first entered to now, you know, the good, bad, or in between? Anything you've been excited about?
Yeah, when I sort of first started out, like I said, it was 20 years ago, and I jumped into an ABC show, and there were some people in that room that were sort of the focus of a book called Burn It Down that came out recently, and I was in that environment. And
I was in
but
that book as one of the good ones. No big
yeah,
deal.
you were. Hell yeah, you
I
were.
was.
Yeah, but I got, you know, I got to see some pretty, it wasn't like filthy, but it was sort of heinous to sort of the people of color generally, was kind of that was the stuff that I saw. And it was like, it was definitely, when it wrapped up, a bunch of those people jumped ship to other shows, and I immediately was like, I don't think Hollywood's for me. I don't think, or TV anyway. And so I jumped into trying to do like shorts and features, and then eventually ended up, I would get sort of what they call open writing assignments, and they would be incredibly depressing. And so I ended up, the way that our little comedy group 1491 started was just us trying to make ourselves laugh. And because we were all sort of, if we were trying to write in this town, we were all getting those kind of assignments, like, you know, they start depressing and then they end depressing, and then there's nothing really learned or gained. And we didn't want to do that. So we started making ourselves laugh. And by the time we were, you know, doing sort of bigger venues and failing upward because we are men, we ended up, I looked up and I saw that the landscape of TV had changed, which was really, really cool. It was, streaming sort of opened up a lot of doors for people, and those people held open other doors for other people. And everybody that, like Sierra, who was working their asses off while I went and fucked up and did comedy stuff, like skits, we're holding open doors for people. And by the time, you know, sort of 15 years after I left sort of network TV stuff, it was, you know, I don't know, it's probably hyperbole to say like a safe environment, but there were a lot of us holding that battering ram and trying to smash doors up. And so that was really cool to see. And you know, but when our comedy group, the 1491s, like, we had a play that we got produced at the Oregon Shakespeare Festival in 2019. And when that happened, that year was, Rutherford was kicking off, Reservation Dogs was kicking off. I was on a show called Barkskins. Everybody, there was just sort of like this little, like, you know, kind of thing. and people who were a part of that wave that were holding that sort of battering ram are continuing to work, and that is really, really heartening for me. That's sort of how things have changed. It's not a, when I was sort of starting out, it felt really stutter steppy unless you were really playing the game, and it wasn't something that I don't think I knew or had the wherewithal to do. And now the what seems to be, even though, like, you know, there aren't a lot of people writing right now, but the people that are and can are doing so with very honest expression of voice, and I think that's really, really encouraging. You know, there's not a lot of, you know, kowtowing to popular opinion. There's not a lot of, you know, oversight from studios or whatever trying to tell people what Native is. We all have Taylor Sheridan to tell us what Native is, and I'm really, really grateful for that. It's those kind of
Yeah,
elders
he's doing
that
a great
teach us
job.
our ways. Just not kidding. So I think, you know, I do think that right now there's the wave is still cresting. I'm just really happy that it hasn't crashed yet. I'm really excited to be a part of it when it does, and responsible probably. But for right now, it's still going, and I think that's really, really encouraging, because the longer we can ride that, the more people can hop on, and I think that that's pretty awesome. So
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you. Like, truly thank all three of you, because like the way you all and your journeys, like y'all have been working since day one, and seeing you all move forward, especially like it was the 2021, 2022, just seeing how much has come forward, how much of our stories have come forward. I know, like for myself, I didn't start writing season 1 of my show till like Res Dogs was out and Rutherford Falls and Fancy Dance. So it was like, oh my gosh, this is, you know, I love to see that journey for us, and like just hearing from you all. It's powerful stuff. So to talk a little bit about, you know, journeys, you all have uplifted quite a few community members that at one point in time, non-community members had no idea about. DeFaro, Jana, Lily, you know, these are all now like powerhouse household names, forces of nature that multiple people know, like above and beyond. So for those out there that are tuning in with us that might have the ability to do likewise in championing new faces and voices, what are like words of advice that you would give to them in the here and now?
Well, I'll
this
just
is
jump
really, I
in.
like. I just want to say really quick that I'm really excited about the fact that we get credit for DeFaro and Lily and
I'm like,
Jana.
that's what I was getting ready to say. I would just like to jump in here right now and say that Lily upheld me. Like I had nothing to do.
Terrified.
I had nothing to do with that at all. So but I think the spirit of the question that you're asking is around how are we uplifting each other, and how are we like being present and good people to each other. And I mean, I wish someone would do the numbers. I feel like we did this once in Res Dogs, but I would love to see it like with Rutherford Falls, just like and what in Sydney's work as well. Like if you were just to take like Sydney, Sierra, and Sterling and like look at the shows that they've had an opportunity in hiring people in, and like see how many DGA cards and WGA cards were like were like accomplished by those three individuals hiring Native people to come and work on their shows, write on their shows as first-time staff writers, to direct on their shows as first-time directors. Like that's the reason why like there's so many of us now, is because we had like people uplifting us and finding us and being like, hey, I saw something in this in this short, or this, you know, listening to a podcast and seeing people like interacting with each other. Like I feel like that is just kind of the spirit of how our community is. And it's really, you know, I can't take credit for uplifting anyone yet in my career. I mean, maybe I'm starting to get to that point, but all I can say on the topic is being a person who has been upheld. It's been I've always, this has always been my dream. It's always been my, you know, dream to be a writer director since I knew it was a job that a woman could have, which was 21 years old, so I can't say my whole life. But like to then finally have someone call me up and say, hey, I want to bring you into this writer's room. And I was like, but Sterling, I'm not funny. Are you sure you want me on that show? And he's like, yes, I want you to come on that show. Like it, you know, it has meant everything to be seen and to have that door open, because as we all know how hard it is to break into this industry. And now I've been able to like turn a career around in this space that is so hard to survive in. And I maybe am starting to believe in myself, which is hard to do in in these streets. But yeah, I have been the one that has been upheld. So maybe someday I can pay it forward.
Yeah, I'm just actively hitting people like whack-a-mole and just keeping people down as much as possible.
You're a liar.
Yeah,
I know
you're
that
sort of
to
a
not be
poison in the
true.
community.
Yeah, I'm the biggest crab in the smallest bucket. It's great.
Period. Well, okay. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Um, love that. Thank you. So I wanted to take a little bit, you know, I've asked a lot of gigantic questions, and I kind of just, you know, storyteller to storyteller, I would love to know, like, when it comes to storytelling, filmmaking, theater, all of the above, like, do you have specific people in your life or in the professional world that are your influences? Tell me about them.
What influences, like from early on, or people that were I'm in constant awe all the time. I'm one of these people. I've been lucky enough in my life to be able to have always I've always known what I wanted to do, and because of that, the novelty of being able to do what I do never ever wears off, which is great. And you know, anytime I might get bogged down by the intensity of the work or whatever, I can always just sort of look around at the fact that there are, you know, there's a production going on. There's like lights and people, you know. I grew up not knowing what a boom mic was, and like all I have to do every once in a while is go over to the sound department and be like, "Oh yeah, those are those guys from the Bugs Bunny cartoons." You know, so with that in mind, it's probably easier to say, and I'm not going to, who like you count on sort of one hand who doesn't inspire me, but everybody else is like, anytime I see anything that's out in the world, it doesn't matter how bad the show or how bad the movie or whatever, it's always something that I'm like, God, this is amazing. They made this thing and it's awesome. And that's from within and without the community. Like, I mean, you know, there's um I'm always still that like eager little kid sort of watching movies with like a giant thing of popcorn and just like giddy as hell that I get to do that. And I get not only do I get to sit there and watch the movies, I get to make them and sort of be a part of like being in this craft. And whenever I find myself either in a room, like a writer's room, or on sets or whatever, or even, you know, as much as difficult as they can be, even with, you know, executives at studios and the people that work in that job in that capacity that might be what they call non-creative. I'm still like I try to get to know as many people as I can, and to be as curious as I can about what everybody does, because nobody's journey is the same and everybody contributes to this massive and like, I mean, really childish and stupid thing that we all do together, like just telling stories and being able to like do that and bring those things to life in weird ways. It's difficult and hard, and it's never stops being magic. But I think, to succinctly, probably Coleman Domingo, beautiful, beautiful human being. The most inspiring right now.
Mean, I think we all kind of grew up. I don't know. I always say this because we're not supposed to say like we're a monolith, but like I don't know any Indians that don't love television or movies. Like everyone, I remember one time we were making a joke on Rutherford Falls where Michael Gray's character Terry Thomas said, you know, back when I auditioned for Last of the Mohicans, and she's like, "Who were you trying to play?" And he's like, "One of the Mohicans." And there was like the non-native writers were like, "Do we believe that that Terry Thomas would have auditioned?" And all the native writers were like, "Absolutely!" Like everyone has a native uncle that auditioned to be in something, because like I remember my mom worked in Kayenta, which is like on the Navajo Nation on the Arizona side near Monument Valley, and she worked at the only hotel like hundreds of miles around, and it was called at the Holiday Inn, and it's where like John Wayne and Robert Mitchum and like all those guys filmed the westerns, and they would all stay there. And so she, you know, had heard all these stories as a waitress of like them getting drunk and fighting in the lobby, and then getting like 86th and they had to like beg to come back because there were no hotels and stuff. And everyone has like just stories of, you know, not either being on a set or like my mom is a very famous Navajo tapestry weaver, and she demonstrated at the British Museum when I was like 4. And she we were on a kids show in England to promote the exhibit that we were working on. And the people called us up and said, like, do you want to be in a movie? We're making a movie about the American Revolution in England, and we need background actors, and you guys are here. So if you stay for like an extra 2 months, this is back when people had money. They like paid for background actors to live in England for 2 months, so they could be in this movie. But we played like Graham Greene was like a medicine man, and Al Pacino was like a Revolutionary War hero, which it was crazy. And we were like the medicine man's children. And so like within like 2 months, I was in like a whole thing with like dirt on my face in a fake cave made out of styrofoam. And I remember just thinking, and we have this giant gift basket, and it was all this fresh fruit. And I remember being like, hooray for Hollywood. Like, I'll do it for the fruit. Like, it was the coolest thing I'd ever seen. It was the coolest job ever. My brother was in a cradle board and he was crying, so he got a speaking role. I was still jealous. And I remember just thinking, like, I never want to leave. I just want to be here for the rest of my life. And so, like, I do think, like, you know, we are some of the first subject matter that Thomas Edison filmed, and I feel like we're intrinsically connected. And so I think there is like a visceral you're just so happy to be in the room. Like, I've worked on bad shows and I've worked on good shows, and the writer's room itself, it doesn't matter. There's still some of the funniest people you'll ever meet in those rooms, some of the best stories, some of the best gossip. And so for me, it's like the whole experience is like what I enjoy about it. And like, so like Migizi is saying, like, you just find people to be inspired by all around, either who you don't want to be like or who you do want to be like. But I feel like if you get into these spaces, it's very rare that you meet someone who's like thinks it's lame. Like, for the most part, everyone is like so jazzed to be there.
Was that Revolution? Were you in
It
Revolution?
was Revolution. And we got to meet Al Pacino, and because my brother is named Michael after Michael Corleone, right? My son
Oh,
is
that's great.
named
That's
after another
great.
character in The Godfather. But he loved my mom because she was like, my son's named Michael, and he's like, I've met a lot of Michaels, and like he was so nice to us.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's great.
Dang, I love that. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so before I let our audience here ask away, I think my final question for you all is truly like specifically this year. We've had a lot of things happening. It has been quite a roller coaster with every strike, every win, every tentative agreement, all of that, including personal stuff. My question for you all is, what are you looking forward to this year? Or who are you looking forward to, bringing forward with you during this year?
Girl, we're just trying to make it through the day. What are
I
you
know.
talking about?
Wow.
Like the future? I don't even know. I mean, I really do think like I've never lived more day to day in terms of just like we have wildly no idea what the future holds, either in a hopeful way or a pessimistic way. And so if there was ever a time to just like hunker down and be in the present, I feel like that's what I'm focusing on right now, in the hopes that it's like planting seeds for the future. I think like the last 5 years have been such an example of like I made Rutherford Falls in the like right when the pandemic happened. We had our first production meeting, and then they shut everything down for the pandemic, and then we like clawed our way to we were in the first productions back. And so I've already made one show at the end of the world, and so I feel like what we did during that time was like such a beautiful thing, and you're seeing all the like fruits of that labor now for so many of us. So I just feel like, all you can do is focus on today and the work we're doing today. If you try to think about page 200, you're going to go insane. But if you can just focus on, the first one, I think that's all I'm doing right now anyway. But I'm also making a show and very tired. So this is probably not the best advice.
Yeah, that's how we're in post on Alien Earth, and all I can think is like I just want it to be done. I'm looking forward to this being done and out. And yeah, it's gonna be great. But man, yeah, so fully in the day-to-day space right now. Looking forward to Sterling's got a show coming in.
Yeah, I'm excited for that. I love an Indian show I didn't make because I get to just watch it and enjoy it, and I don't gotta wonder about what could have been.
Yep.
I'm feeling so much the same. Like I am on script right now, and I just like cannot wait. We have 1 week left of the writer's room I'm in right now, and like I cannot wait to hit send on the draft and like peace out and go back to hang with my family. I've been away for like 5 months. And so, yeah, I think resting, being with family, just finding ways to like be in community as much as you can and you know, I guess what I'm hoping to do this year more than any is just like actually like not put so much pressure on all the like side projects that are like collecting dust. I'm like, no, I don't like I can just like do what I gotta do and then like rest a little bit, like, or else, you will crumble under like all of the like stresses that are coming from either, inside the industry and a lot of it coming from outside. So I'm most looking forward this year to like spending some time with family in between the work.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you three for answering all the questions I've had in my brain for weeks and weeks. So truly, Wopila. Now, we're not fully done yet. We've got a few questions from folks. So, and of course, forgive me if I pronounce any names wrong. My name's Aiko, so I'm like, I understand. I'm so sorry. From Karama. So the question is, when casting, how do you think we can do more to ensure we represent the wide spectrum of Indigenous people when there are limits to what we can ask in the casting process?
I mean, I think that just is why it's so integral to have Native people connected to the project at the beginning of a project. Because I think what often was happening was you had a very well-meaning non-Native person who maybe wrote a great script and wanted to include Indigenous people, which was incredibly admirable, and then cast the person they thought was best for the role, but wasn't connected enough to community to vet them or ask questions or know even the best casting directors for that job. And then you get into a situation where you staff a bunch of Native people who have to tell you, oh God, no, that person is not Native. And then you have to write like crazy background stories to explain why this non-Native person is now playing a Native person. So I feel like to me, that is like the best reason why, you want to have a Native person connected to the project. But I also feel like there are ways to ask where you're from. People know, if you're a Native and you ask someone where they're from, they know what you're trying to say, and if you either answer the question or you don't, and you do your due diligence. But I think there's also, I mean, Instagram is my best friend. Like, it's very hard, and obviously like I'm no judge or jury. So, but I think like it is easy sometimes to kind of do a little bit of digging, which I don't know if as a casting person you're allowed to do, but I do think like having more Native people in casting offices as assistants, as co-casting directors, I think is really integral as well.
I vote that Migizi from here on out plays every Native character that's ever written.
Oh, absolutely. You should be our
Awesome.
yeah, our
Yeah,
Gollum. You
sounds
should be our,
great.
yeah. Just get the dots on your face and you'll just play all of them.
Oh, that'd be down for. I just don't want my
Yeah.
face to be on screen. That's fine. Yeah.
No need to have you on screen. That's not what we're saying.
No, good. We're on the same page.
Excellent. Love. Okay, so from Anushka, do you have any advice for people who love writing and directing but aren't naturally outgoing?
What?
I will say it's probably harder for introverts now because so much of this is selling yourself and putting yourself out there, which is exhausting. But I mean, there's a lot of weirdos who make movies and TV who are super shy, and I think like you just have to make something and you have to find enough people. You just have to find a crew of people that you can make something with. So you don't have to make everybody happy and you don't have to have like 10 million followers, but if you can just find like 5 people to believe in the thing you're making and make it with you, and make the goal, I think, a little smaller. I mean, I assume Erica has, but and we've all been at Imaginative Film Festival, right? And like there are so many weird ass movies that I've watched. I've watched hours and hours of like crazy short films that are somebody made in their basement, claymation or something. Like if you really, I truly do think, especially with people's phones now, if you really want to make something, you will find a way to make your story. And like I don't think you have to have like 1,000 million friends to do it.
Yeah, that's good. I can't really add much to that, honestly. I think
You're just too outgoing.
You do no. I'm a naturally aloof person. I wouldn't say I'm introverted, but I definitely keep a distance from people, and but the people I'm friends with are the people that I'm I will be close with and outgoing with. But so in that sort of vein, it's always been, you have to, there is sort of the effort, but I think what I'm just going to do that man thing and say what Sierra said in different words, which is just you find your community, you find your little group, and then and with that little group, I think that grows over time. If you continue to do it.
Yeah, I feel like Wes Anderson is like shy. Like there's a bunch of like famous
Mhm.
people who are famously successful who are shy. I don't think that should stop you.
I feel like too, like especially on the writing side of things, like, if you're writing like pilots or features or shorts, like, you can spend all the time, alone that you want doing that, and like the script is always gonna like, speak for itself and like be something that you can send around, and enter it into contests or, fellowships or things like that. And then, if you can like eke your way in on the writing side, then you can start to kind of like, get on sets and it is a huge, like, I'm an extrovert and I walk off of a day of set and I'm completely drained of all energy. But yeah, I think there's a lot of and then I feel trapped by the loneliness in writing. So I do have a bit of the opposite problem, but because I can be alone with myself in the writing, I'm sure that an introvert can find a way to be who they are on a set with a lot of other people too.
Absolutely. So from Blaine, we've got Blaine saying, Native writer and director here, looking for advice on how to shop my scripts around to draw other Native filmmakers to collaborate. Not writing related, but how could I also find Native focus grants and such to help get my project off the ground?
Sierra already mentioned one. Places like Imaginative Film Festival. There are other places, other organizations. They're out there. That's the only one that's coming to mind off the top of my head. But there's things like Skins Fest and a million
Sundance
other
Institute,
places. Sundance Institute.
Talking
There's
Stick, Skins
all of that.
Fest.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there are organizations that you throw yourself in, make a short film, you go or even just go and participate in one of these places. It's immediate that because the community is still small and growing. There is a natural tendency for everybody to chat and try to work together to figure out things. I think right now we're in a really great place where everybody knows that rising tides raise all ships, and everybody's like, I think it's a very supportive and cool time. So it's a cool time to go to any of these places, even just film festivals, and go hang out at a panel, whatever. You'll meet people. That's kind of, actually, I realize that's kind of how I did it
How
in
we
certain
met.
ways. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I feel like also too, depending on your nation, like talk to your tribe. I feel like there's a lot of like organizations within and then also just the actual nation itself that can provide grants and things.
Thank you, thank you. So I'm getting quite a few questions. They kind of are all revolving around the same thing, but it's mostly the question of, we've got quite a few non-native writers in the chat, in the universe, and they're asking more of like, what do I do if I want to write a native story? Is it okay, to write about XYZ? Should I, is there a specific resource to consult, or people to consult? So that tends to be the theme right now with all the questions. So I leave it all to you three in answering, what does a non-native do when wanting to write a native story?
I always answer
No,
this. Oh, sorry, Migizi.
no, go
You
ahead.
go. I always answer this question by saying, like, ask yourself why you want to write that. Is it because there's like a really great character, or is it because you know, had read about a culture in a National Geographic and thought, oh, this is really interesting, I want to like write about this, which was the Taylor Sheridan route, which, I feel like that's like some individual soul searching that you kind of have to do, where you have to like really ask yourself, like, am I writing this from like a place of like, I have like a character that's going to go on a journey that I really believe in, or like, oh, this is like this like cool culture that I find interesting and like want to like go into this world and write about it. And I don't know what where the line is of like, oh yeah, go for it or don't go for it. But I think if you were to sit and ask yourself like really seriously, why do I want to write this story? You know, if you're honest and looking at your answers, you're probably going to, you know, realize whether or not you're going to be extractive or neutral in the project that you make. And that said, like I've definitely, you know, to kind of like repeat what Sierra said earlier, like if you do endeavor on this, I think that the thing that's like should be mandatory is like including like paid native people like immediately before you even break ground, and that those people need to have real buy-in and real power on the project, and not just kind of like someone that like is just being brought on as a consultant to kind of like give a thumbs up to the project. But I feel like, you know, there, even for myself, like as a white native, like there have been times where I'm like, am I the right person to like write this specific story? And like I'll write down all the reasons why and I just think we have to like be honest with ourselves in terms of like, you know, what our motivations are for the work, and especially our communities that have had so much extracted and so much damage done. It's just really important for folks to not do any more damage.
Amen. Yeah. Do you want to go? You go.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I think one of the things about telling Native stories is that if the I'm sort of adding on to what Eric said about asking why you're telling that story. What is it that gives you a personal connection to it? And I think that's really important. Like, I think if I were to um, tell a story from, a different point of view, from a different, from a different culture's point of view, or that's set in a place of a different culture, I'd be like, why would I not just put this where I'm from? There's a community and a basis of what I know there in that space, and I wouldn't. I think that was, there's a reason why I would play something, even when you're sort of the popular, overwhelming sort of Americana stories. I wrote a sort of this like really intense family drama that takes place in suburbia, but it wasn't just about sort of like the suburban, life or culture. I actually had to think to myself, like, it was actually a native story sort of hidden as a suburban white drama. And I was like, why am I setting this here and not in my own community where this is clearly what this is about? And the reason was I wanted to see if it had to do specifically with my culture and the way that we treated prisoners and all this stuff. And I was like, well, if I want to see if actually could this work in a world like suburbia. And so it was like, um, it was a question I had to ask myself of like, why would I want to tell a story about this community particularly, and what am I going to do with it? I'm really looking forward to extracting from the suburban community, because it's been happening to us so much. But I think it's a question you got to ask yourself, and then if you do, and if and when you do, the thing is to stay connected to that community. I mean, there are stories. I'm not being apocryphal, and it's nothing that hasn't been reported, so I don't feel bad saying this. I don't think I will be prosecuted for slander. But the Taylor Sheridan from Wind River promised a lot of profits to Native women's organizations in Montana that never got delivered. I think Chloe Zhao just went off and did a Marvel movie and never kind of went back to Oglala. So I think that these are practices that make people wary. And if you're going to tell a story about community, you're going to be a part of that community. That is a continuing thing. I think you always have to sort of be accountable to that community, because as Native creators, we always are. You can't take that off. You can't walk away from that. The people are always going to be there to sort of call you back in or call you out on your bullshit. And I think that's like, it's an important distinction. And that's what I mean by being extractive. Can you get in there, take what you want, profit off of it, and leave with your, flotsam and jetsam still there? Or are you really a part of that community, and do you continue to help? A weird and sort of underrated person who's actually been supportive randomly in the Native community is like Riley Keough out of nowhere. Like, she, continues to advocate for Native voices and all kinds of stuff. And it's like, unsung, never asks for anything, never asks for any credit. And I'm like, that's classy, man. I like that. So, you know, there you go. That's all I gotta say about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think like you can't be a Native person working in the media without getting a million people asking you, can you please read my thing or sign my thing, or is this okay? And I just think like I've never been to a panel for other subject matter where people catcall in the comments asking like I'm not a woman, but can I write this woman story? Or like I just never see it in any other, like if we were doing like a stunt man panel, you wouldn't see people being like, is it okay if I write about a stunt? Like it's like this weird sort of like I'm nobody's priest. And it's just, especially in Indigenous communities, if you go to people and get to know them and talk to them and become, like Migizi's saying, like you build a kinship and then you ask them to read your screenplay. You know what I mean? And so just by even like proxy of how this is being done, I think in the same way Erica and Migizi are saying, like, ask yourself why you're doing this and what your intentions are. And then maybe even explain those intentions to someone and watch their face and see how they react. I just think it's like really just not odd necessarily, but it puts the other person in a very odd situation. And I don't think other demographics get put in that same situation. And I just think that's something to think on.
Truly could not have said it better myself. So thank you. Thank you. I think that's a question that tends to come onto our plates many a time. So, you know, thank you three for answering that, especially. We are almost at time. I don't want to keep anyone too long. So I just want to thank you three again, truly, for hopping on in and, you know, answering every question thrown your way. Major, you know, will be a thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. I want to thank the Writers Guild Foundation, Storyline Partners. Thank you again for making this happen. I see there's still a few questions and comments. So, you know, as Sanaz was saying, for more cultural narrative support and consulting, reach out to Storyline Partners, reach out to WGA's NAIWC.
Yes.
Happy
All of
to-
the different committees are super helpful. Like we lean on them so much. And also too, I feel like there's a lot of questions about like actual Native filmmakers who are aspiring asking for advice, and I just want to make sure we like say something to them before we go. But no, I mean, this is a terrible time to try to get into this industry, and I think it was always insanely hard, but I also think like it's just so much harder now for all of us. But I will say that Indigenous people never expect things to go well. And I think that right now, that is the most valuable resource that we have as media makers, is a group of people who just expect to work harder and expect for things to kind of go to hell at any moment. And so I do think if you are an Indigenous person trying to make something, I do think, I've been in other panels with I'm Latina. This is not the advice they're giving to all the other people. I think a lot of people are saying like, wait a year like this. But I will say, if you are an Indigenous person and you feel in your heart you have a story to tell, I would chase that as much as you possibly can.
Yep. Absolutely agree with that. There's never, and there never has been and there continues, like I said, it's still a wave that's cresting, it's building. And I don't think there never has been a good time to be a Native filmmaker in Hollywood. And so therefore, like, fucking, why not jump in?
Why not?
It's
Amen.
rough, man. It's rough. It's awesome.
Yes, Erica, any lasting words or final thoughts?
No, I'm just so grateful that I got to hang out with Mig a little bit, and also just great to get to know Sierra more. As one day maybe I'll be a friend and not just a fangirl, but I'm also happy just being a fangirl.
We're
So
friends. You're so sweet.
but no, it's so great to always like, you know, talk about these topics. So I'm grateful to have been here.
Same.
Yes. Thank you all.
Thank you, Aiko. Thank you so much.
Thank you.